In today's dynamic business landscape, the ability to scale your operations efficiently is super critical. Whether you're producing a one-time output like a movie or you're trying to set up a pipeline to manufacture at scale, designing a well-structured pipeline is super important. Welcome to the first episode of the Professional Playbook, where we'll be talking about optimizing pipelines for scale. After having worked on a ton of projects with countless people across different product forms and types in various different spheres, there's a thing or two that I've learned about setting pipelines. To set up an optimized pipeline, there are a bunch of things to keep in mind, whether it's optimizing the sequence of tasks or choosing which stages are important so that you focus and give it more time. Bottom line is, the pipeline itself that is set up has to be efficient in terms of how you're going to structure it, what points exactly the feedback flows from one stage to the other, the kind of milestones that we need to account for and track exactly. In the bargain though, it almost seems like it is very crucial to reduce the number of times the baton is passed from one stage to the other. And the more we're able to make this happen in our pipeline, the more efficient it will be overall. So what are some of the things that you could do when you're approaching building a pipeline for any form of creation at scale? First off, of course, is to maximize impact in the final stretch. Basically, you want to make sure that you're spending more time in the latter parts of the pipeline, right? In the final nodes in the pipeline rather than the initial nodes. I mean, at the end of the day, what comes at the very end is the final output, and you want to be spending more time over there. So a lot of what I've worked on over the years has required creating hours and hours of content, of course, with 100, 200, 300 people, but close to 300, 400 hours of content within a year's span. And at least in the content creation pipeline where it could be live action or animated, say animatics are an important part of it. So the animatic stage in particular would come somewhere over here. And you know that this is not the final output, because this is what will be the input for these stages that come after. In fact, the actual animation is what is more critical. So of course, the animatic is created to align everybody working on that particular episode or on that particular video. But the final output at the end of the day, which has all the polish, is during the animation stage, which is why you want to ensure that this is what takes more time than this itself. The next thing that you could consider is streamlining processes for faster progress, right? You want to make sure that you're grouping similar functions and reducing the number of nodes in the pipeline. A callback to the backend thing that I was talking about earlier, right? Where you want to reduce the number of handoffs. This way you'll make sure that tasks are consolidated and the feedback kind of flows from one team to the other much faster. So when I was doing my internship in Volvo, for example, overall in a single day of 8 working hours, the expectation was to produce 5 trucks end to end, and a single truck would have a takt time of anywhere between 80 to 90 minutes. So the idea was to kind of figure out how we could bring the takt time down a little bit. And what we did was just move a few workbenches in and around so that similar tasks could happen in one place. And from a content creation perspective, it's very similar to making sure a bunch of people are working on the same tools, for example. And what that kind of ensured was that multiple teams working on the same thing are working collaboratively together and moving much faster in the process. The next thing that you could consider is to eliminate pushback to enhance efficiency. So what this means is basically try and prioritize creating a smaller team that has very similar skill sets to the larger team, so that when a feedback loop comes through, it doesn't get pushed back to the larger team and then they're stuck in the same vicious circle. Instead, it moves ahead in the pipeline to the smaller team that could then handle the feedback in general. So in this sample pipeline, for example, there may be some tasks where you don't have a choice, where you would be going on in the same loop again and again. But there could be some, like I just mentioned, where you could build a smaller team that has the same skill sets. And what that will ensure is that when the team has to give the feedback, you don't necessarily end up moving back in the pipeline. Instead, you end up moving forward, which is ideally how a pipeline should be set up. And then this brings us to the next obvious piece, which is to move forward and not in circles. Which is, like I just mentioned, how a pipeline needs to be set up. To ensure that you're actually moving forward, it is very crucial to consolidate feedback. And what this enables is basically that you actually keep moving forward, again eliminating that endless cycle that you just hate in an overall pipeline. So to give you a real quick example, say this is a pipeline to design websites and stuff like that, right? You know, in terms of how this pipeline is set, there would be some sitemap related work, there would be some content creation, and then there would be actual design. So it doesn't make sense to actually perfect this stage as much as, say, something up ahead, right? So whatever feedback that exists, some of it could get addressed, yes, but some of it could move forward. And then maybe it's a possibility that that feedback actually keeps growing as you move forward in the cycle. But then there comes a point where the big task is taken care of, or a bigger team takes care of it, under which a maximum of that feedback is then accounted for and addressed. Point being, you're moving forward in the pipeline. And the last thing that you could consider is to parallelize tasks for simultaneous execution. Don't think of your pipeline as a chronological chain. Think of how you could figure out opportunities where teams could work concurrently. So don't confuse this with offsetting of tasks per se. This doesn't necessarily mean that when one team is free, give them the task so that, both teams are occupied at the same time. Instead, it means more like what are simultaneous things that could happen parallelly and at the same time so that they could then meet at a converging point within the pipeline. So yeah, of course, at a very broad sense, these are 4-5 different ways via which you could optimize your pipeline. And depending on what product you're working on, depending on whether it's content creation, whether it's a manufacturing setup, some may be more relevant and some less. But the idea is to find the right permutation and combination that fits exactly for what you require. By doing so, there's no way you won't be able to boost the productivity and improve the scalability of whatever product you're working on. Hope this helps you with the hustle. If you found it useful, don't forget to like and subscribe for more such content. Thank you, peace out, and I'll see you in the next one.